BJ Edwards, Lady Vols, all of that. And a lot happened over the weekend as Tennessee Hoops is rolling forward. And I want to start with this before we get specifically to what BJ Edwards entering the transfer portal means. With the guys that have come and gone, do you believe there is any sort of philosophical change whatsoever? Because I know where you're going to go. You're going to say no immediately, but whatsoever to add some shooters to open up this offense a little teensy tiny bit, recap what they brought in, and kind of give me your thought.
I don't believe there's a philosophical change. I believe he has brought in talent to be able to run an inside-out game that I think should be run where he has enough shooters. It's the way Rick Barnes is going to utilize the rotation. So I'll tell you this right now, he's not going to utilize rotation the way he should. He's going to still play big. He's going to still go for the real big guy that's more of a post guy to play at the small forward position and just crowd the paint, and it's going to be problematic. I do believe that. And so they do have enough. I don't think the BJ Edwards transfer is a big deal because they do have enough firepower at the guard spots now. I just don't think Rick Barnes is going to utilize the firepower the way he should.
Yeah. You could be right, but I believe this, and I was rewatching some games over the weekend, some Tennessee basketball games. I think you've sold Rick Barnes short on one thing, Caleb. And I think that is Uros Plastic just didn't do a good job of getting the ball out at times. Now, I believe that when they would dump it in and the inside out game is he needs to find somebody that can shoot from the perimeter, correct? And a lot of those guys, everybody would drop back and they wouldn't double down on Uros, and then they would play the perimeter shooters. So he had trouble finding people. When I went back and watched, I think some of that's on him. I think we gave him too much of a pass. I think some of that's on him.
I've been critical of Plavsic from the start, but okay. I would say that's still on Barnes because he would play him more than Adu, and I think Adu is significantly better than Plavsic. I don't really think it's close either.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean, I can't believe that Uros Plavsic is testing the NBA draft waters. I don't know there's no way he makes it in the NBA.
No, unless he grows about 3 inches and adds 35 pounds. And then
even that, he brings the ball down every time from the board. Like, the most important thing for bigs in the NBA now is to do what you said, find the open guy from underneath the basket. And if they're going to go up, they can't bring the ball down. Like, okay, yeah, Draymond. Sorry,
I got taught that in middle school.
Yeah, exactly. Draymond Green is 6'8". If he can play under the basket, Uros Plavsic is 7'1". Every time Uros Plavsic gets a rebound, Draymond Green would strip him. It wouldn't even be close. Green wouldn't even have to try that hard.
Yeah, I don't know that Plastic, you bring up a great point, could get off a shot on a close rebound of the basket.
Yeah. Yeah, he has no shot. No pun intended.
Okay, so BJ Edwards is out. So you don't think there's any sort of major philosophical shift here. You just think that Rick Barnes is trying to get better at what Rick Barnes does.
Yes. And for those concerned about BJ Edwards, we all thought he was going to be the next Zakai Ziegler and back him up. Zakai got hurt last year, and they still didn't play BJ Edwards. I don't think that's a philosophy thing. I don't think he was cutting it the way Barnes wanted him to. And, guys, I got to be honest. I'm hearing some rumblings that Freddie DeLeon, who was a mid-year commitment and a 4-star, is a potential superstar combo guard. Like, we're talking a 6'5" guy who can play the point and can shoot from the outside. So it's almost like a combination of Vescovi and Zakai Ziegler with another inch. That's what I'm hearing about Freddie DeLeon.
Interesting. That's what they need. They need a guy who can create his own shot when all is going to heck in a handbasket.
Exactly. And
we're past the days where that's Kevin McHale with his back to the basket.
Yes. And Kevin McHale also had Harris was drawing attention away.
It's not a post guy anymore. It has to be a 2-guard.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm saying if it is a post guy, again, you can have back to the basket guys, but Tim Duncan was great with his back to the basket too. But you had Manu and Tony Parker and a bunch of shooters all around at the time. Kevin McHale, they had to worry about Parrish. Bird could stretch the floor. And so Danny.
Yeah, But the philosophy of the game overall, which is what I was alluding to, I don't think anybody dumps it down in the post when they need a sure two anymore. The sure two has to come from the outside in as opposed to the inside out. That's the way basketball is. So you're thinking a Freddie DeLeon could be that guy. That would be monstrous for Tennessee. So while we're touching on basketball, the Lady Vols with some shifting. Are the Lady Vols better today than they were last week when I was at my son's graduation? By the way, Caleb, thanks for filling in. And did I cry? Yes, I did.
Aww.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I think they are. They added Jewel Spear, Wake Forest transfer. For those who don't know, 2 years ago, Jewel Spear led the whole ACC in scoring, and last year she was in the top 5 in the ACC in scoring. This is a big help because she's shooting roughly between 35 and 40% from 3 right now, which in the women's game is really good. You know, the women's game good is in the 30% range. So 35 to 40% is actually really, really, really good. And she's another guard. I think that Jordan Horston was a player you turn to create something for yourself, but she didn't fit Kellie Harper's system that well because Kellie Harper likes to use bigs, and then she wants her guards to be able to shoot well from outside to stretch the floor. Jordan Horston didn't stretch the floor too well. She was a slasher. Jordan Horston would have worked in John Calipari's offense if someone ran that in women's college basketball in a dribble drive. She's not working in with Kellie Harper. So her being gone, a guy like Jewel Spear coming, I do think the Lady Vols should be significantly better this year.
I used to say, pardon me, in the women's game, that winning a championship was equivalent to making the Final Four in the men's game because there were more teams and more competitive. Does that statement make sense 10 years ago?
I would have said it was equivalent to making the Sweet 16 in the men's game 10, 15 years ago, but okay. I see your point.
Yeah, okay. So good. We're with that. So let me throw this out at you, and you tell me if it's a bad comparison. Let's reset it before you answer. But I'm going to ask you this: what's a fair comparison? The women's game, a team making the Final Four, which is deeper than it has been, but not incredibly deep at all, or a men's team making the Sweet 16 or Elite 8?
Women Final Four, men's Sweet 16 or Elite 8.
I'm taking championship out of the mix because it is now competitive in the women's game.
Yeah.
You can't just show up with a bunch of meeks and win a championship in November, basically. I mean, we all knew they were going to win it.
That was that was I look back, I was young, but I remember the writings behind those teams. It's like everybody knew that team was going to be the greatest team of all time the minute they showed up on campus.
Yeah, and you get a Candace Parker or a Taurasi, and it's like that person is a different evolution in the women's game. They're going to win it all. Okay, so what's the equivalent? I guess I need your help in phrasing this question because
I think Sweet 16 in men's is a good equivalent of the Final Four in women's. I think that's a good equivalent.
Okay, so you have to bet right now. Kellie Harper over the next 3 years, let's assume they all keep their jobs and Rick Barnes doesn't retire. Over the next 3 years, Kellie Harper makes more or less Final Fours than Rick Barnes does Sweet 16s.
Now, here's the trick.
That's hot high heat right there.
That's a good one. Rick Barnes has made 2 Sweet 16s in the last 5 seasons. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. Kellie Harper has never made a Final Four. So based on that, I would have to say Rick Barnes. But I will say this, because I'm hedging a little, I'm not very comfortable with that bet. Because Rick Barnes has made 2 Sweet 16s in the last 5 seasons. Up until 2019, he hadn't made it out of the second weekend since 2008, or the first weekend since 2008. So we had a long drought. And he's still, every single year at Tennessee, he's been eliminated from the tournament. He's lost to a lower seed. So that's a really, really big indictment. But I still think Rick Barnes has a better chance of making a Sweet 16 than Kellie Harper does a Final Four over the next 3 years.
Well, I wasn't just talking about one. For goodness gracious. I mean,
I think we might have to talk about one.
With the support, if they don't make one in the next 3 years, I'm changing coaches on both sides. I don't care if Rick Barnes retires or not.
Rick Barnes just went 3 years without making a Sweet 16.
I know. That would be 6.
But he made it this past year is what I'm saying. So,
right.
He goes
But
3.
6 out of 7, that's not cool.
No, yeah, that's true. You're right. So I'm just saying, I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out, but yeah.
Okay, so who makes the most Final Fours, or who does the best? Kellie Harper in Final Fours or Rick Barnes in Sweet 16s?
Kellie Harper in Final Fours at that point, because once Rick Barnes gets to the Sweet 16, I got him losing every time.
But he would make it. So
he
who
would
makes
make it? Yeah.
Wow. I'd go Rick Barnes, Sweet 16. What did you go with?
Okay, once they get there, I would say Kellie Harper would do better in a Final Four than Rick Barnes would do in a Sweet 16. Only because Kellie Harper hasn't lost any Final Four games. She just hasn't won any. Rick Barnes just keeps losing when he gets to the Sweet 16 to lower seed teams that he's better than.
Mr. Jones asked, does Candace Parker have any daughters?
I think she does. I think she does.
I don't know if she's married. Why don't you Google that real quick while I play the element?
As a matter of fact, I think she has a kid with Sheldon Williams. That should be a great basketball player.
Yes, and good gravy. Let's hope it looks more like her than him.